That little voice in your head, the one that tells you to earn your dinner with a workout, or to skip it entirely because of what you ate for lunch? That's not a health coach. It's not your conscience, and it's definitely not a sign of discipline. It's a saboteur, and it's hurting you more than you know. We're constantly told what to eat, when to eat, and how to control our bodies. But what if that control is actually a cage? What if the cycle you're trapped in, restricting your food, inevitably breaking down and binging, and then drowning in guilt, isn't just a diet gone wrong? What if it's a way you're punishing yourself, even if you don't fully realize it? This is the hard truth we need to talk about. For so many of us, our relationship with food has become a primary way we harm ourselves. It's a type of self-harm that doesn't leave visible scars, but the emotional wounds run deep. This isn't about a lack of willpower. It's about using food to cope with emotional pain. An eating problem is any relationship with food that you find difficult, and it's often a way to hide from feelings that are just too painful to face. This was never just about food, it's about what the food is covering up. Today we're going to unpack this cycle. We'll explore why it happens, how it counts as self-harm, and most importantly, how you can start walking the path toward peace. Because you don't deserve to live in a state of constant war with your own body. The illusion of control. The cycle almost always starts with a promise. The promise of control. In a world that feels completely chaotic, with pressure from work, relationships, and the endless perfect-looking lives on social media, food becomes the one thing we feel like we can manage. When everything else feels uncertain, counting calories and making strict food rules can give you a false sense of stability, a fake feeling of accomplishment. This has nothing to do with nutrition. It's about a desperate need to feel like you're in the driver's seat of your own life. Restrictive eating, which we often dress up as discipline or being good, can be a direct reaction to feeling worthless or wanting to punish yourself. It all starts with a simple thought, one that seems innocent enough. If I don't control what I eat, I'm going to gain weight and people will reject me. Or maybe, some foods are dangerous. I have to be so careful. These aren't health-conscious thoughts. They're thoughts that grow from fear. The act of restriction, of deliberately skipping a meal or cutting out entire food groups, is an act of self-deprivation. It's a way of saying, I don't deserve to be nourished. I don't deserve to feel pleasure. This isn't discipline, it's a form of self-abuse, where you use the absence of food as a weapon against yourself. Think about it. When you feel like you messed up at work, or you had a fight with someone you love, does the thought, I don't deserve to eat, ever pop into your head? That's a direct line from your emotional pain to physical punishment. You turn your anger, sadness, or frustration inward, and your dinner plate becomes the battlefield. That anger turns inward, cultivating self-hatred, and you try to atone for your perceived mistakes by not nourishing your own body. The problem is, this control is just an illusion. Our bodies aren't designed for deprivation. They're wired for survival. And when you intentionally starve your body, you're just setting the stage for an inevitable and powerful backlash. The inevitable backlash. The binge restriction is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can probably do it for a while. It takes a ton of focus and energy. But eventually your arms are going to get tired, your grip will slip, and that ball is going to explode to the surface with incredible force. That's the binge. Binging is not a moral failure. It is not a sign of weakness or a lack of self-control. It is a completely normal biological and psychological response to being deprived. When you restrict food, your body and brain flip into survival mode. Your hunger signals get louder, your cravings for high-energy foods become intense, and your mind gets totally fixated on everything you've told yourself you can't have. But the drive to binge is more than just physical. Binge eating is often a way to cope with stress, sadness, or just plain boredom. It's an attempt to self-soothe. When you're overwhelmed by emotions you don't know how to handle, food can feel like a temporary escape. It's an attempt to fill an emotional hole with physical fullness. For just a few moments, the act of eating, the texture, the taste, the sheer amount, can numb the pain and offer a quick hit of comfort. Many people say they feel completely out of control during a binge, almost like they're watching themselves from a distance, unable to stop. This isn't a happy indulgence, it's a frantic, desperate act, often done in secret and wrapped in shame. The binge itself can be a way to punish your body for not being what you want it to be, or a way to physically act out the emotional pain you feel inside. You might feel like you have to endure the pain of overeating as punishment for some other failure in your life. But the comfort food provides is tragically short-lived. Because as soon as the binge is over, the numbness fades, and it's replaced by a tidal wave of much darker feelings. The spiral of guilt and shame. The morning after a binge is a very lonely place. The physical discomfort is bad enough, but it's often completely overshadowed by a crushing wave of guilt, disgust, and self-loathing. This is where the third, and maybe most damaging form of self-harm in this cycle appears, the psychological beatdown. This is the work of your inner critic, that relentless voice in your head that loves to point out your failures. This negative self-talk isn't just a passing bad mood. It's a destructive habit that chips away at your self-esteem and your mental health. It's a constant monologue of abuse. I'm disgusting. I have no self-control. I'm worthless. I've ruined everything. These thoughts are pure poison. This internal bully plays a huge part in keeping the whole cycle going. When your self-worth is completely tied to how your body looks and how well you control your eating, any tiny slip-up feels like a catastrophe. This self-criticism is punishing and abusive, reinforcing the belief that you are fundamentally broken. And this psychological self-flagellation does more than just make you feel awful. It keeps the cycle spinning. The intense guilt and shame from a binge often lead to a renewed, even stronger commitment to restriction. You think, I was so bad yesterday, I have to be extra good today. You double down on the rules, promising yourself you'll exercise more and eat less to get that control back. And just like that, the cycle starts all over again. Restriction leads to deprivation. Deprivation leads to a binge, and the binge leads to a tidal wave of guilt that powers the next round of restriction. You're trapped. On top of all that, these feelings of shame often lead to another subtle form of self-harm, pushing people away. When you feel disgusted with yourself, the last thing you want to do is be around others. You might cancel plans, dodge your friends, and pull away from the very people who could support you. This isolation makes the loneliness and depression even worse, leaving you all alone with your harshest critic, yourself. And the cycle just tightens its grip. Redefining self-harm. When most people hear self-harm, they think of things that leave visible, physical marks. But that's a dangerously narrow definition. Self-harm is any behavior someone intentionally uses to cope with overwhelming emotions that ends up causing harm to themselves. The key parts are coping with distress and causing harm, whether that harm is visible on the outside or not. Let's be real, disordered eating fits this perfectly. It's used to manage emotions and deal with stress. For many people, the self-harm part is very direct. They use their eating behaviors as a form of self-punishment, driven by intense self-criticism and low self-esteem. The physical damage is undeniable. Restricting can lead to malnutrition, heart problems, and bone density loss. Binge eating can cause digestive issues and increase the risk of diabetes. These are serious, real harms to your physical body. But the psychological harm is just as severe. The constant negative self-talk, the obsession with food and your body, the anxiety, the isolation, these are all forms of emotional self-injury. The entire cycle of restricting, binging, and feeling guilty is a ritual of self-punishment. It's a way to turn your internal pain into something you can see and feel. When you feel worthless on the inside, you do things that seem to prove that feeling is true. This pattern often shows up alongside other, more subtle forms of self-harm. Think about chronic self-neglect, like always overworking and never letting yourself rest. This can come from a belief that your worth is only tied to how productive you are, a way of punishing yourself by denying your need for care. Or think about purposely isolating yourself from friends because you feel you don't deserve their support. When you look at it this way, the relationship with food isn't a separate problem. It's part of a bigger, more insidious pattern of dealing with emotional distress by hurting yourself. Recognizing this isn't about adding another layer of shame. It's about correctly identifying what's wrong. The problem isn't your appetite or your body. The problem is the pain that's driving all of this. The eating disorder is the symptom, not the disease. Breaking the cycle. If this conversation is hitting a little too close to home, please hear this. There is a way out. But the path to healing doesn't start with a new diet, a different set of food rules, or a promise to just have more willpower. That's the language of the cycle. The way forward begins with a radical shift in perspective, from control to compassion. The first step is awareness. Just acknowledging what's happening without judging yourself for it. It's recognizing that these patterns, the restriction, the binging, the horrible self-talk, are not character flaws. They're coping mechanisms that just aren't working for you anymore. Seeing these habits as a form of self-harm is the first giant step toward breaking them. The second step is to get curious. When the urge to binge hits, or when you find yourself restricting, instead of meeting that feeling with judgment, try meeting it with curiosity. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? Am I stressed? Lonely? Sad? What is this behavior trying to soothe? This shifts the focus from the food to the real emotional trigger underneath. Journaling can be a really powerful tool here. The third step is finding alternative coping strategies. If food is your main tool for managing emotions, you need to build a bigger toolbox. This doesn't have to be complicated. When you feel an urge, just try to delay acting on it. Wait 15 minutes. In that time, try something else. Go for a short walk. Call a friend. Put on some music that changes your mood. Try some deep breathing. The goal isn't to magically make the urge disappear, but to create a little space between the feeling and the action, and to prove to yourself that you have other options. And the fourth, and maybe the most important step, is to practice self-compassion. This is the direct antidote to that inner critic. Negative self-talk is a huge driver of this cycle. Self-compassion is about actively being kind to yourself. Imagine your best friend came to you, completely heartbroken after a binge. Would you call them disgusting and worthless? Of course not. You'd offer them kindness and support. You have to learn to offer that same grace to yourself. It might feel weird at first, like speaking a new language. It can be as simple as wrapping yourself in a cozy blanket or just putting a hand on your heart and saying, "This is really hard. I'm struggling. But I am worthy of kindness." CTA breaking this cycle is incredibly hard to do on your own. If this has resonated with you, the most powerful and courageous thing you can do is ask for professional help. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, are proven to be very effective. A therapist can help you untangle these harmful thought patterns, and a registered dietitian who specializes in intuitive eating can help you heal your relationship with food itself. And for more conversations about mental health and healing, please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing this with anyone who you think might need to hear it. You never know who is struggling in silence. Conclusion. Your difficult relationship with food is nothing to be ashamed of. It's a sign of deep pain. It's proof that you have been trying to survive overwhelming emotions with the only tools you had. But that tool has also become a weapon, and it's time to lay it down. Healing is possible. It's a journey away from punishment and toward nourishment. It's about learning to listen to your body instead of trying to silence it. The goal isn't to get perfect control over what you eat. The goal is to come home to your body, to trust it, to care for it, and to finally be at peace. You deserve that peace. You deserve to heal. If you are struggling, please reach out. Asking for help is a sign of profound strength. This is Mind Unlocked, and your awareness is your power.